Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning in from wherever you've come from, whether it be from Facebook or YouTube. Welcome to the Ella Johnson Show. Listen, I am just so excited to have you guys here with me tonight. I want to just thank you all so much for your support and tuning into the Ella Johnson Show. Here on this show, we set the table for Real Talk TV. Now, you already know, if you've watched the show, you know that nothing is off limits on this show. So, tonight we're going to keep that going. We're going to have a candid conversation about COVID. Now, listen, guys, right now, there are 350,000, over 350,000 dead Americans as a result of this coronavirus. Unfortunately, we have a president who admittedly played it down when he knew it was airborne, when he knew that it was worse than the flu. But this is what we have right now, because back in January 2019, that was when the World Health Organization, you guys remember, that's when they came on the scene and announced this virus and said that it was, a pandemic. That's when they called it out. And since that time, our nation has been in crisis. Now, I want you guys to take a look at this video. It's a little lengthy, but I want to get you ready for what we're going to talk about tonight, because it's time for us to sit down and be real about this thing. Because I have a nurse that's coming on after the video, Nurse Sherrie, and she's on the front lines of the pandemic, and she's going to help us get some understanding out of this. But I want you guys to take a look at this video so you can see exactly what it is doing to people in this country.
We're a nation in freefall, in a crisis of historic proportions. Nearly 3,000 Americans reported dead in one day, the most since the coronavirus pandemic began. This is equal to those who lost their lives on 9/11, and it's happening day after day. Hospitals and frontline workers, they're keeping this country afloat. They're saving lives. They're witnessing the suffering firsthand day after day, while leaders in both the Trump administration and Congress fail to pass a much-needed rescue package. These are just some of the stories of Americans that we have lost from the people they leave behind.
It's just so raw. Sometimes I'm grieving for my husband, and then I realize my mom's gone, and then I'm grieving for my mom, and I just think, oh, I'm going to go tell Dennis, and then Dennis is gone. And so the two people that would have been so supportive had the other one gone. They're both gone. They started giving him morphine and Ativan, and I turned him over, and I rubbed his back, and I said, I love you. He said, I love you. And I said, you're going to go now, okay? You can finally be at peace. And he said, ooh. And he took his last breath about 30 minutes later. And I bathed him, and I cut his hair, and I put clothes on him. And then I left him. There's nothing else I couldn't save either one of them.
That night was the toughest thing I ever been through.
I mean, you bring your child into the world. I can remember the day Stasia pushed Tegan out. And as parents, you never expect to see your daughter in a coffin. You never expect to see your daughter in an emergency room with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, dead. We're young parents, and no one can prepare for it, but we weren't prepared for this. And in our hearts.
He went to work. That was the last time we saw him. That's the last time his children saw him. We'd gather in front of the hospital in the parking lot every evening at 9 p.m. And we'd pray because we believed he'd come home.
I always have a positive nature where he's going to be fine. He's just fighting this thing off. He's fighting it. He'll be fine. And, he never recovered.
I don't want to say it's been harder for us than it has for everybody else, but the truth is it has. It has. It's not the same. And it's not the same when you feel responsible for people's, whether it be their life or their quality of life, because you care.
There's been a lot of tears shed in ER rooms during COVID because we seeing that person dying like our loved one dying because they don't have anyone else, and they need that grace and they need that human touch and they need someone to be there when they're taking their last breath.
Dr. called us in to say our last goodbyes, and I told her, we talked to her, and we just told her. I told her she didn't have to worry because I was gonna make sure that I take care of her kids because I knew she would have did it for me.
As I'm going inside my COVID unit, I see that this elderly patient is out of his bed and trying to get out of the room, and he's crying. So I get close to him and I tell him, "Why are you crying?" And the man says, "I want to be with my wife." So, I just grab him, I hold him. I did not know that I was being photographed at the time. And, he was just crying, and eventually he felt better and he stopped crying.
We saw this coming. We knew the rise in deaths was coming. It always follows two other key metrics: new infections and hospitalization.
So I hope that watching that video, the purpose of this video was to wake some people up, because some of us do not take this virus, this situation, this pandemic seriously. But you see for yourself how serious it is. Now, I want to bring my girl Sherrie onto the scene because Nurse Sherrie is joining me tonight because we're going to have a candid conversation about COVID. And Sherrie is on the front lines of this pandemic. She's a nurse, she's a traveling nurse. She has seen it all. So she wanted to come and sit with us tonight and share with you guys exactly what's going on. Welcome to the show, Nurse Sherrie.
Hi, Ella.
How are you? You look beautiful, my love.
So do you. I'm wonderful.
Wonderful. So I'm so glad that you took time out because I know you were so busy. You and I've been trying to book this for a while now, but you were just like, Ella, let's do it, because it's very important. We really need to talk about this. So welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Tell my guests, tell my audience more about you, what you've done and what you do from day to day.
Okay. So first, just to give you a little background, I am a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 24 years. I've been working in the intensive care unit for 13 of those 24 years. I've been working specifically what we call COVID assignments since March of 2020. So that's just to give a little background. Unfortunately, by the time the patients come to the intensive care unit, 9 times out of 10, that means that they need supplemental oxygen, and usually that means ventilation, being put on a ventilator.
So because you have, you're in the mix of this every day, you're going to be able to give us some good information. And you're a nurse, so a lot of your information will be
Yes.
good and valid. So welcome to
Yes.
the show. Let's start out. You saw the video and you
Yes.
see the kind of what it's doing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is
Mm-hmm.
just a few, but there are
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of families that have felt that same pain, that have shed those same tears. And guys, by the
Yeah.
end of this broadcast, Sherrie and I are hoping that some of you will change some habits, change your diet, and just not panic with this, but just make some sound decisions so that
Yeah.
we can weather this storm, right? But
Mm-hmm.
let's start
Yeah.
out. You and I are both in Florida.
Yes.
Girl, that's a whole show by itself talking about DeSantis in this show because we're going to keep it
Yes.
real. We're going to keep it
Yes.
real. I'm going to say some stuff that you probably shouldn't because you got that white coat on, right?
Okay, I'm
You
gonna
just
let you
let
do
me, yeah, just let me say it. I can talk about it, but
it. Right.
it's just it has become political here in Florida, and we are
Right.
like in the top 5 for the deaths, but we are pretty open here.
Yes.
He back in September of last year, 2020, Governor Ron DeSantis kind of basically opened up our state, basically, and just
Yeah.
said, we're going to open up the state, go to your restaurants, and I'm not going to punish anyone who, if you go in an establishment and you don't have a mask, we're not going to fine the owners if
Right.
you. So he has
Mm-hmm.
just kind of, they wanted to stimulate the economy, but people are still
Yes.
dying, right, Sherrie? So
Correct.
let's talk about this. If someone goes into an establishment and they do not want to wear a mask, talk to me about what that really does. Because a lot of people, oh, Ella, I don't need to wear a mask. I'm going in and I'm coming right back out. It's not that big a deal. Talk to me and talk to them about why it is a big deal.
Well, first of all, you're going into an unknown place where someone can cough and sneeze at any given time. You don't know that. And if you're within 6 feet of them, or even worse, closer than 3 feet, then you can expose yourself to something. They may just be coming down with the symptoms. The incubation time is 2 to 14 days. So they may have just contracted it, but are not sick enough or have enough symptomology that they're aware that something is wrong. So it is a big deal. We do need to mask because, again, it's kind of like defensive driving. You know what your capabilities are, but you don't know the other people around you.
But Sherrie, what about those people that say, okay, I wore the mask and I still got it? How do we explain that?
Well, usually people that are prone to get it are immunocompromised. And a lot of people don't realize that having a chronic illness causes you to be immunocompromised. Anytime you have a chronic illness, it creates an inflammatory presence in your body. So that leaves you susceptible to catching colds easily, the flu, or anything else. So they probably caught it because their immune system is already suppressed from some other factors.
So how often should you change the mask? Should you like keep them? I mean, what's the hygiene of taking care of the mask? Because a lot of people, some people buy the disposable ones and change them daily. Some people wear the same mask over and over. How should we care for our mask? And what kind
If
should we have?
You can get away with the cloth mask and
Okay.
still social distance. So a lot of people, because they have the mask, they refuse to social distance. So you have to do both. Is effective. And then if you have the cloth mask, you really every day need to just hand wash it. Some soap and water. You don't have to, get the strongest soap out there or bleach it or anything, and just hang it out to dry. And if you want to do a really, really quick method, you can get 3% hydrogen peroxide. It does not discolor it if you have a colored mask, and you spray it really good and just let it air dry. And
Okay.
that's the quickest way to do it. And that will keep it clean.
So in these areas where we have a lot of cases, for example, like New York, I think right now
hmm
it's either New York and California that are probably going neck and neck with the highest cases. What are they doing wrong? What do you think?
It's population. They
Oh,
are some of the most densely populated states, especially New York, because you don't have as much area square footage as you do in California. So you have several million people. I think it might even be a billion people caught up in a 14 or 15 or 17-mile radius, because New York City is just a big island. So you have that many people on a small 14 or 17 stretch of island, then there's really no room to social distance unless you actually stay in your home.
wow. I was thinking about this too because we all know that this thing has become politicized. I mean, we can
Yeah.
all see, we can all read, we're all watching television, and we see, and that's a sad thing because now that we have a vaccine, nobody wants to take it. Now, someone asked me one day, they said, Ella, well, I mean, real talk, would you take the vaccine? Well, I'm going to tell you that right here on my show. No, my reason may be different than other people's reasons, but I do
Right.
socially distance. I do wear my mask. I do wash my hands. I do all of that. And but I wouldn't take it because I just don't trust it. And I know that I feel there are a lot of people that feel the same way, Sherrie. Are we
hmm
wrong? Are we wrong? You can
I'm
tell
going
me.
to be I'm going to be honest, no, because normally when you do a clinical trial on a vaccine or a medication and they're doing these studies, stage one usually lasts anywhere from 3 to 6 months. You have a small group of people. All of these are double blind studies. That means half get the placebo, half get the vaccine. They don't know which one gets, the person that's receiving it don't know if they receive the vaccine or the placebo. Stage two trials usually take 6 months to a year. Stage three trials take 1 year to 3 years. You have stage one, two, and three in a rollout in 4 to 6 months. So that's very alarming. And then on top of it, the normal vaccines have a weakened or a deadened, or what we call an inactivated part of the virus injected into you. What they do is they inject it in hen eggs, they grow it, they weaken it, they purify it, and then they put it in a vaccine. This vaccine is different because they're using mRNA, which means messenger ribonucleic acid. So because of the way that they have created this vaccine and it's different from any other vaccine, that's cause for alarm too, because it's never been trialed. This mechanism of action has never been trialed on humans before.
Wow. Okay. Because
So,
I understand too, Sherrie, that people are getting sick after they get the first shot. Had Do you know anyone that's died after getting this vaccine? Because or which one are we talking about, Moderna or Pfizer? Which one?
we're talking about Moderna.
Moderna.
I
Okay.
don't think the other ones are out, or if they're out, they haven't been distributed that I know of. But I
Okay.
know at the hospital I work at, it's the Moderna that they're doing. Most of the people I've taken care of have gotten the normal side effects you would get from a vaccination, which will be a sore arm.
Okay.
Sometimes they get mild flu-like symptoms.
So that's to
Nothing
be
really.
expected. That kind of stuff is to be
It's
expected.
it
Okay.
is to be expected. And then also, this is a two-part vaccine where your flu vaccine is one shot and you're good till next year. You have to take this shot now, and then 3 to 4 weeks later, you take your second shot. So it's still too new to see what's going to happen after the second injection.
Now, I'm just gonna go there because I did read this. They don't have enough for everybody right now. Is
No,
that
they don't.
okay?
That's why
So
they're giving it to frontline workers and the elderly.
and the elderly first. But they
Mhm.
so I mean, what's the plan? Do we know if okay, you guys may not get it this round, kind of sound like those stimulus checks. You're not gonna get it this round, she'll get it next go around. Is that what is that what's going
Uh,
on with the vaccine?
that's pretty much it. They're, like I said, frontline workers and your vulnerable population. So it's the elderly and children between 12, I want to say 12 and 17,
Now,
because it hasn't trialed to be safe for children under 12.
oh, okay. Now, one thing I noticed too, Sherrie, symptoms. This
Mhm.
varies,
Yes.
because people are kind of making it up as they go. And I think someone can have a scratchy eye and like, oh, is that COVID?
Yeah,
So what do people, because this is the thing that's also troubling, not everyone displays symptoms either. You
that is
can,
correct.
but let's just say someone is not feeling well. What kinds
Mhm.
of stuff are they going to experience if it's COVID?
That's the thing that's been hard. The symptoms are very similar. The thing that stands different from the flu that's very prominent will be the loss of taste and smell, even though people tend to lose their appetite when they have the flu, but they don't lose their taste buds. And then a lot of times when people get colds, they'll get upper respiratory infections. So their cough is usually wet, where this is a very dry cough, like you've inhaled smoke.
Yeah, that's one of the things I did notice too. They say that you should stay home if you are experiencing this. But
Mhm.
that's the part I don't understand. Okay. If I'm staying home, if I think I have it, at what point should I go to the hospital?
When you feel like you can't breathe.
So that's when it's but is that too late?
Uh, well, it's too late if you wait until you're gasping for your last breath. But if you notice that you're laying in bed, you haven't moved, and you're having difficulty breathing, that's when you should go. You should call the hospital, let them know that you believe you've had it or you've tested positive for it so that they're aware.
So, in other words, if you're having dry cough, body aches, stuff like that, just
Hmm.
quarantine. Go away from your
Yes,
family. Drink lots of fluids and stuff like that. But if it
get rest.
affects your
Yeah.
breathing, now I have a friend who was diagnosed with COVID. He went to
Hmm.
the hospital over in Atlanta,
Hmm.
and when he went to the hospital, they turned him away. He went to two hospitals in the emergency room and was turned away.
Hmm.
Why? How can something like that happen? Why? I know they're scared too. I can
Right.
imagine that you guys are, because I know one of my other friends who's also an RN, and she said that one of the first things that she has to deal with when you have a COVID patient is trying to convince them that it's COVID. Do you experience
Yeah.
that also?
Not so much convincing them that it's COVID, it's convincing them of the things that they need to do to care for themselves while we're in the hospital. The biggest thing is, what we affectionately do for babies called tummy time.
Okay.
So it's better, or, technically it's proning. So that means laying on your stomach. A lot of them don't want to do that, because they don't feel comfortable. They're already aching as it is. They don't want oxygen. They just get very aggressive or assertive about the treatment that they're going to receive. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is they don't want to be compliant until they know that they can't breathe. And at that point, we're already talking, putting them on a ventilator, or as the public would say, life support.
Okay, so this is the thing that's also troubling, because there is no cure for it.
No, there's
Okay,
no cure for any virus, really.
not really. Okay, so
Well, none
basically,
that the FDA is willing to talk about. Let's just say that.
say now, okay, we'll talk about
Yeah.
that one later, because that
Yeah.
you got that look like Eleanor asked me anything else. And I know the look, you and I talk all the time.
Yeah.
But so when we go to the hospital, they're experimenting.
I wouldn't say they're experimenting, but what they're doing is they are really treating symptomology. That's why I said if you can breathe adequately enough, it's better to stay home. And when we
Really?
say stay home, well, one, this corona is a type of COVID-19 is a family of the coronavirus. When we say coronavirus, it's a family of viruses.
Okay.
That's coronavirus. This is a particular SARS-CoV-2 virus, and it's mutating. So because it's mutating and then you have other people in the hospital that has it, you can get a different strand of it and become more sick. So it's actually for your safety to be at home as long as you can maintain your normal breathing pattern.
Talk to me about the mutating, because that's the newest thing in the news right now.
Right.
What exactly does that mean for the people that are watching this broadcast? If it's mutating, that means it's creating a different type of virus. Is that what it's doing?
Yes, it is, because how viruses work when it enters into the body, that's why they put this RNA, the ribonucleic acid, which is RNA, is like a messenger protein that infiltrates the body and it sends genetic material through the body. So the genetic material of this SARS-CoV-2 is changing. So basically, that's when we say mutating, it's technically changing. But unfortunately, we wouldn't change the treatment to fit because there's really no cure for it anyway.
So the
it's
vaccine is going to work for the COVID and for whatever it changes into?
I'm not a biochemical engineer and I'm not a scientist. From the research that I've done, I would say no.
Now we have opened up a whole different can of worms,
because right, the Moderna has only been trials for right. Moderna they've only done trials on the strand that's out now. So what about the other strand that is mutating into? And they don't have time because, like I said, typical clinical trials, even if they fast track it, which they have something in the White House called Operation Warp Speed. So they're putting their money behind these 5 companies to come up with the vaccine. That's another thing that's problematic also, because whoever comes up with something close enough first gets the money. So are we really taking our time to check into the efficacy of this, or are we just trying to rush to get a product out so we can win the quote unquote prize?
I think it's the second one, and that's why I will not take it. But let this mutating thing. So if it mutates, does it intensify to getting worse?
That's what they're saying. Now, there's a few cases that just entered the United States. So it's too early to tell. That's usually what it means, or it just means because it's new, they don't know how to treat it. So it may not even be any more aggressive than the first strand that we know of. It's just, and honestly, in the hospital, the only thing that we're doing that you wouldn't do at home is we're giving remdesivir, which in the clinical trials, remdesivir has seemed to be effective. I work at the bedside and I've been doing this for almost a year. So this is not propaganda. I give it to patients all the time. I don't see where it's effective. I understand the science behind it. they said that I'm just going to make it simplified. It's obviously more complicated than that. But like I said, the RNA is like a messenger cell. So when they give the remdesivir, which is an antiviral, it's supposed to go in and scramble the genetic material to confuse the virus so that it doesn't spread any further in the body. That's the simplest way I could put it. But that has not been the case. So I don't know if we're just not initiating it soon enough, which I think that could be it. Because again, like you said, they're sending people home to quarantine. I don't know, and I have not seen where remdesivir comes in a pill form. I don't know why I would, because you give Tamiflu for the flu, and that's an antiviral, and that comes in pill form. So I'm not sure why remdesivir would not. But and even with those clinical trials, it was more ineffective than it was effective. And then they give the Decadron, which I'll get into when we talk about what people can do, especially our Black people, and with the diabetes, and how the treatments that they have are really antagonistic to a diabetic patient. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, I don't see the treatments that we're offering working. We're giving IV fluids, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, all those things come in pill form that you could take at your house.
Right.
And you can hydrate yourself, because if you don't have a needle stuck in your arm, that's less infection. Anytime you don't have to break the skin barrier, you're at a lesser chance of getting an infection. So that's why I said quarantining at home is safer. So it's not, you know,
in disguise if you have to
yes,
go
it
home.
is.
Oh, okay.
It is.
Wow. Wow. Listen, guys, for those of you that are just tuning into the Ella Johnson Show, I'm sitting here. We're having a candid conversation about COVID with Nurse Sherrie, who is currently on the front lines right now treating patients with this virus. If you have any questions and you would like to ask Sherrie, please put them in the comment section. And we'll, because I'm looking at my, I'm looking at the live stream as well. So I can see if you put a question there, and we can get your questions answered. Or if you feel a little shy about asking the question, just inbox me, because I have that up as well and I can see it. But we want to definitely make sure that we're getting your questions. All right, Sherrie, we're going to move on to some more stuff. Now, the people that are watching, a lot of people that are watching are saying, you know what, Ella, listen, I don't have insurance. I don't have insurance. And when you call to find out, if you should come to the hospital, it's almost like they somewhat talk you out of it. But people that just really want to get tested, is it easy to get those tests? If you just want to get tested, just say, look, I understand that I may not have the symptoms, but I still want to get tested, because we already know that not everyone shows the symptoms. So how can someone at the hospital say, well, you're not showing the symptoms, you don't need to come? How do you know I don't have it though?
Well, we still have places where they're doing the testing, even up to now. I know in Orlando, if you go to Barnett Park, you can go for free. They have testing sites all over. So you don't have to go to the hospital. Like I suggest, unless you absolutely have to, the safest thing for you and your family is to not come to the hospital. So if you don't have symptoms, it's better to go to the testing site.
Okay. If you just kind of want to be careful.
It's
and how often should you go? How often should you go to be tested if you're not showing symptoms?
It would depend on your exposure to the public. If you are the person that works from home, your kids are being homeschooled, you don't leave your house hardly ever, or you even get your groceries delivered to the house, maybe one time, that's it. Unless you start showing symptoms, then I would go, because you're really not in the public. But if you're out and about a lot, I mean, you can get tested as much as you want. You can get tested. I know my sister works in a nursing home, so they are mandated to get tested every week. So you can get tested as much as you want.
And there are free tests. How do people find the free locations?
All they have to do is put in COVID-19 testing sites and your location. As long as your locator is on your phone or your laptop or computer, it will direct you to the ones closest to you.
Now, is there somewhere they can call? Let's say they're not getting good service. They don't feel like they're being taken care of. Is there a place that they can go to report any of that type of stuff?
There is a 1-800-COVID hotline number that they can call.
To make complaints.
I'm not sure what it is. Yes, I don't have it at the top of my head. Maybe somebody could put it in the chat. But there is a 1-800 number that they can call.
Now we saw the video and we saw that people are really going through, Sherrie. Every time I see those, I just tear up because we're so fortunate. We're so blessed. I know I'm blessed because I have quite a few nurse friends that keep me on point, and
Hmm.
I'm grateful to you for that. But there's so many people that don't have that access, and they're losing family members. And have
Yeah,
you noticed that whenever one person in the family dies, it's like a domino effect? That it's like, okay, well, this person died, now the next one's coming, and it is that's probably because they're always around each other. So if I'm
that
hanging
is
out with my
correct.
family that I live with, I should still wear the mask.
Yes, and especially if there's a member of the family that had or has been diagnosed with COVID, the first thing everyone in the family should get tested, and then secondly, everyone needs to quarantine. But what we're seeing is everyone's not quarantining, or they're not quarantining effectively. And if you live in the same home, then yes, you need to wear your mask unless you're in your bedroom alone with the door shut. If you're married, I mean, it's probably not going to be ideal. Nobody wants to sleep away from their spouse, but you can sleep away from them for 2 weeks, or you can sleep away from them for eternity. You have to pick which problem you want to have.
That's
Go in another room, go in a basement, go in the living room,
that's
take
pretty.
turns going into the kitchen because you have to eat. If you're too sick to get up and cook, call a family member, let them drop the food at the porch and leave, like DoorDash. They don't need
Wow.
to come in the house. You don't need to see them.
That's how I get my pizza delivered. They drop it.
Yeah, yep. They drop it right at the door, and then they text you and say it's at the door.
I have a question. I have a question, and the question is, can you get this virus twice?
Uh, I don't know. I've only heard one or two people say that they've received it twice. Usually, if you've gotten it and it's bad enough, you would form antibodies in your body. So it's highly unlikely, but you could, especially if you're immunocompromised or you have some type of illness like cancer or rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, any type of autoimmune deficiency, then that is highly likely because your immune system is already severely compromised. But for a normal health, it's highly unlikely that if they caught it, they would catch it again.
So that's good news. That's
Yes.
excellent news. Um, okay, now let's talk about us.
Mhm.
We have a tendency to be a little hard headed.
Yeah.
I won. Because I know there's times I can honestly say it. I'm not gonna front like I do it the right way all the time. I mean, there are times, I'll go into 7-Eleven because I stop at 7-Eleven every single day to get a bang.
Mhm.
And I'm like, if I leave it, I'm like, just going in quickly. I'll be right back. That is horrible, isn't it?
I would not suggest that, especially if you're going early in the morning, because everybody else is going early in the morning, getting their coffee, water, snacks, or whatever for the day. So I definitely wouldn't want to run into a restaurant or a store during peak hours without a mask. Because again, what if the person near you turns around, he's less than 3 feet and just sneezes all of a sudden or coughs all of a sudden?
I'm gonna pop him in the face.
Exactly. That's most
I'm just
people's
kidding. I'm
reaction.
not violent. I'm not violent. I would never do that. I would never do that. But no, you just made it real for me because it's like
Yeah.
that one time could be the time.
Yeah.
Now, is it true that it lingers in the air? Let's say someone came in there and they didn't have a mask, and I walk in the store and it's just me and the cashier, but I passed them on my way out and they didn't have on a mask. Is it possible that whatever is lingering? Is that possible?
The CDC says, and see, they're saying that it's airborne, and that's what we have to go with. But if you go to the CDC website, it's actually droplet because of the size of the molecule of a coronavirus. I'm not going to get into, I think it's 40 nanometers because that's like technical and no one really can measure that without a microscope. But we say 6 feet because people are hard headed. Technically, you really only need a 3 foot distance because it's a droplet nuclei, not an airborne one. But because they don't know and because it's spreading so fast, that's why they're saying it's airborne. But usually what happens, it can spread out up to 3 feet and then it drops. Now, the problem is if you're touching surfaces, now it can stay on surfaces, for 12 hours, but it doesn't technically stay in the air past 3 feet for more than maybe a couple of minutes.
So when you go out in public, do you have on a shield, a mask, and gloves? And what's your get up when you go out in public?
Well, I love the clear face shields because now I can
I
wear
do
makeup.
too. I know.
Yeah,
Girl, I've
so
messed
that's
up so many masks. I know. I'm like,
exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, I do like the, oh, I'm just messing up my camera. Sorry. So yes, I do like the clear face shields for that. And on top of it, it covers your eyes, it covers your face, it covers all the way to the side. So to be honest, it's actually a little bit more effective than a regular mask.
Really?
Because it almost covers your whole face.
So you need to protect your eyes also?
Well, yes, because your eyes mucous membrane, just like your nose. So if it gets in your eye, it can spread that way also.
Wow. Okay. I know you've had so many experiences with this because you've been all over, like you travel. You were
Hmm.
recently out of town, actually. Um,
Hmm.
what's the case that brought you to tears that you've experienced? If you can talk about it.
Um, it's usually the kids because when I was in Florida is a little bit lenient about imminent death of a COVID patient.
Hmm.
What we do is if you have a family member, and unfortunately, if they allow you to visit, that means that they are probably going to pass within 12 hours. We have an N95 mask, we have shields, we have gloves. We will provide up to 4 family members with the protective gear that they need to visit the family. When I was in New Jersey, that was not the case, whether it was an adult or a child. So for the kids, what we do is we have to set up an iPad on a tripod, and the family will watch um, as they're passing. And as a mom, I have a daughter and a grandson. I don't know how I would be able to do it without probably busting down the hospital door. And that is the roughest. I mean, first of all, like the guy said in the clip, you never want to bury your child. No one does. And then the fact that when they're passing and transitioning, you can't even be there to hold their hand or comfort them. That's what bothers me the most.
Let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about us because you have a lot of
Mhm.
information available because we have a lot of us watching the broadcast. What is the best advice? Let's start with why, we get it more than anyone. I know a lot of people try to make it a racial thing, but I don't think it is. I think it's because of our health. Can you expound
Yep.
on
What I've noticed is we call it the triad, and it usually affects African Americans because unfortunately, disproportionately, most of them have hypertension, diabetes, or overweight, which means your BMI is greater than 30% of your normal body weight. And sometimes, in most cases, I hate to say it, I would say in my estimation, maybe 80% of the African Americans that we get that come in have all three. They're overweight, they're diabetic, and they have hypertension.
that?
And
Really?
remember, yes. So anytime you have any chronic illness in the body, it creates an inflammatory response. So that's what causes your immune system to be decreased. So then you have all of this on top of that. So anything that's introduced into the body is going to compromise it more because your body's already fighting every day against your pressure being high, against the excess glucose in your body. And then back to what I was saying earlier, we use the 2 drugs that they use mostly that besides your normal vitamins that you can get over the counter, is remdesivir, which is an antiviral that's metabolized through the liver. And they use decadron or dexamethasone, which is a steroid. What a steroid does is an anti-inflammatory. So the purpose of it is to go into the body and to reduce the inflammation. But what it does is it causes the liver that's already getting hit and compromised from the remdesivir to spill more glucose into the body and suppresses the insulin. So even when we're giving them insulin, it's fighting the insulin that we're giving them, and more glucose is being spread into the body. And that's why it's hitting them harder. And what I'm noticing is mostly the 40s to 60-year-olds that taking the hardest hit, I should say.
Mm. Okay, so let's speak to those people because we need to give some people some relief, some help tonight.
Yes.
If you're experiencing diabetes and you're experiencing high blood pressure and high cholesterol and all those kinds of things, what should they work on first? Give them some advice, Nurse Sherrie.
Okay. I'm just going to give some simple tips that people can do every day. I mean, there is a plethora of things that you need to do, but most human beings get overwhelmed. If I was to go and list the 12 or 15 things that
Right,
I know would work,
right,
they're going to just be too overwhelmed.
right.
So here's something simple that everybody can do. Drink water. And alkaline water is excellent because all disease grows in an acidic environment. So the more alkaline you make your body, which means you make your body pH 7 or greater, the better it functions and the better it can fight off diseases. You can arm your immune system to fight off whatever diseases you have. Alkaline water is expensive. The cheapest place they have it is Walmart at $3.38 a gallon. That might not be cost effective for somebody who's unemployed and have 4 or 5 children at home. The
Okay.
cheapest thing you can do is get a lemon and squeeze it in some spring water.
Okay.
And you got your alkaline water for cheap for 74 cents a gallon, and you drink that. Everyone should
How
be
much water
drinking.
should we? I was just going to ask you that. How much water should we
Yeah.
be drinking each day?
If you should be drinking, they always say 2 times your weight in kilograms. So if you're 75 kilograms, you should be drinking 150 ounces, which is a little over a gallon because a gallon is 128 ounces. But to be fair, because if you're not used to drinking that much water, you're not going to drink it. Just drink a gallon of water a day, gallon of lemon water a day. And that's for everybody because you rehydrate. That's one of the things we do when you come in with any type of flu or pneumonia, because the COVID vaccine the COVID virus is actually a pneumonia.
Okay.
That's how we diagnose it with the chest x-ray. So the best thing you can do is hydrate your body, hydrate. So drink a gallon of lemon water every day, or if you can afford it, alkaline water every day.
Okay, so you guys got that because we're going to give you some good advice here. So when you guys leave by the end of the night, you're going to say, that was good. I've kind of got a plan now. Lots of water. If you don't have alkaline water, buy spring water, put lemon in it, at least a gallon a day. What's next?
Okay. Also, for my diabetic people, we really have to watch our diet. First of all, not only would it prevent you from getting any illnesses, any viruses, or extra bacteria, it can also cure diabetes. I know that they say there's not a cure. If you're a type 2 diabetic, that means that you have it normally because you're intaking more glucose than your body can eliminate. Type 1, that's not necessarily because you were born with your pancreas not functioning, but type 2 definitely, and most people are type 2. So you can watch your carbs. It's not just sugar. Well, I don't put sugar in my food. Yeah, but if you're sitting there and you're eating a plate of rice, that's sugar. If you're eating that beautiful French bread or Cuban bread, and I love that, hot with some butter, beautiful, not good for your body. No bueno. So we have to look at our carb counts. You have to read labels. You know, you could pick up something, it'll say 100% fruit, and then they've added 64 grams of sugar in it. So reading labels, watching what we put into our body, that's the best thing that you can do.
I have
And
somebody
we have
just ask, what's alkaline water? What's a brand for alkaline water? So we just give him a brand.
a generic brand will be Walmart. It actually says alkaline water on it.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So I would say lots of fresh fruit, not canned fruit that they package in syrup. Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, lean meats, preferably grass-fed, pastured meats. The best diet would probably be a vegan diet. I myself am not a vegan, but I'm aspiring to be that because a vegan diet is an alkaline diet. So that means you keep your body in an alkaline state at all times. So that keeps you protected. It helps your immune system to keep you protected. So when something is introduced, your body's already fighting it like, no bueno, you're not coming in here.
Wow. So basically the advice that you're giving builds their immune system and helps with the diabetes at the same time.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
What's something else they can do?
Okay.
Change your diet. I know that's so
Yes.
hard because we love fried foods. We love
Yes.
those things, but let's just
It's
break
killing
it
us.
down and stuff that's not good. Okay, I'm going to throw something at you that I know is on the table a lot because it's easy and it's affordable. Fried chicken, no good. Take with
No.
baked chicken, right?
Yes. Baked chicken.
Fried fish, replace it
Yes.
with baked fish.
Correct.
Greeny vegetables.
Yes. Green vegetables, because a lot of people want to say potatoes and corn is a vegetable. It's very starchy. We have vegetables, but they're starchy vegetable. So those are the ones you want to stay away from. Your non-starchy vegetables will be your green or your cruciferous vegetables.
Okay. All right. So no sodas, stuff like that. There's some things that are just obvious that
Yes.
we have to do better with. So this is why African Americans are dying quicker than other people. And it is because of our diet and the
Yes, and our pre-existing health issues.
right.
Right. It's not a racial thing.
Yeah,
Like I
it's not
said,
like
being turned
COVID
away.
gonna go down here and get all the black because it doesn't know. It doesn't know if
Yes,
you're Democrat, doesn't know if you're Republican, doesn't know if you're black or white. It just attaches
exactly.
certain things because some people are able to fight it off. And I guess
Exactly.
it's their immune system. Now, are there any over-the-counter pills or anything that you would suggest that could help this as well?
Yes. What we're doing in the hospital, and just for your general health, we don't have this problem in Florida as much as people in the Northeast or the upper Midwest, is we get plenty of sun. So you get vitamin D. Now, the best thing would be to be in the sun for 15 minutes a day. But, if you can't do that, or if your diet is not good, that means you won't absorb it. Even if you are in the sun for 15 minutes, you don't absorb it. And you don't absorb it because you will burn. If you sunburn, that means that something's going on in your gut biome, so you're not able to absorb vitamin D from the sun. Then you can take it over the counter, 5,000 IU a day.
Okay.
Vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams a day, which a lot of people do that if they feel like they're getting sick. They take the airborne, which is vitamin C and vitamin B. So vitamin C, zinc. You really only need 30 milligrams a day, but I mean, they have it coming up to, I think when they sell it over the counter, it's like 220 milligrams, and take zinc a day, in addition to building up your immune system. If you get a cut, it accelerates the wound healing. So it's really good for that.
Okay.
Magnesium is another one that's very good that you can take over the counter.
What about elderberry?
Elderberry is excellent. Elderberry is good. Anything that you could take for your immune system. And that's when we're going more into our natural products like elderberry, ginger, turmeric, key limes. Key limes are excellent. And that also alkalines water too. You don't see them a lot in the stores, but they're the small limes that are like the size of a gumball. They're
Right.
really good. So those kind of things, yes.
So for people that say, well, I can't afford to do all of that, that's rubbish. We're giving you both ways. If you can't afford the alkaline water, we're giving you an alternative to that that's just as
Mm-hmm.
good. So you have to find a way, because we'll find a way to get that wig that we need. We'll find a way to do everything
Mm-hmm.
else that makes us look good
Exactly.
on the outside, but somehow we tend to ignore the stuff that makes us look better on the inside. So
That
that's
is
what this show is
correct.
all about. If you're just tuning in, if you have questions, I want you guys to definitely put those in the comment section. And I see that we do have a 1-800 number for COVID-19. And I want you guys
Mm-hmm.
to, play this back, write it down if you have a pen and paper right there. But the number is 1-855-600-3453. Okay, let me give you that
Great.
again. And thanks, Kelvin, for bringing that. Kelvin, your manager, is there, and he's just all over it. He's all
Yeah.
over it. That number is 1-855-600-3453. But you guys can always go to the website. Go to the internet and Google it, find it, because we have to turn this thing around. We have
Yes.
they opened the schools. This is the thing that gets me. They wanted to open the schools. Now kids are dying. Would you say that more kids are dying more now, Sherrie, than when we started this back in 2020?
I don't think more is dying because we don't hear that many statistics about
Right,
kids.
right.
So I would say that, and I'll be honest, from just like my grandson's school, they have actually have put into place better protections than they have at probably some corporate places. Like all the kids' desks have shields. They all have their own MacBook or tablet, their own headphones. Every desk has a sanitizer when the parents aren't allowed in the schools anymore. So they do the drop off. As soon as they drop off, there's somebody there with hand sanitizer. There's somebody there spraying them off. There's somebody there. They have to have their own mask. But if they forget, because they're kids, especially the smaller ones, they have extra masks for them. The school doesn't provide lunch anymore. So you have to give them their lunch. So they're actually, instituting a lot of safety measures. My thing would be to, if your child has to go to school, because sometimes too, every parent can't work from home.
Right.
They have to go to work. So the kids have to go to school. And if they're very, very small, they may not have the discipline to stay at home, or they may be too young to be at home alone to, do online school, that they have these. So you could just call up to the school and say, what procedures do you have in place? And a lot of times, if you go to the school website, they have it on the website. And if anyone's contracted COVID, they have it posted every week. I know they do that throughout Florida. I'm not sure about other states, but I know in Florida, every county, every week, they list, what school. And if they have too many cases of COVID, they shut the whole school down. So they have to go to online learning.
Yes.
So that, so I feel like the kids are protected better than some of these corporate workplaces that don't have these protections in place.
So when you go into the hospital, do they provide enough for you guys to protect yourselves?
Well, yes, I would say they do. It's just the procedure is different. What we're accustomed to is every time you use a mask, you discard it. But because of the nationwide shortage and the pandemic and so many people, now we have masks, we have to use them until they get destroyed or soiled, or some places they'll give you a new mask once a week. What works in my favor is because I travel. Right now, I'm traveling through the Central Florida Division South, and they have 12 campuses. So if I go to a different campus, I get a new mask. Their employees, not so much, but they have given them great disposable. They look like gas masks. That's not the name of them. They're like
the N95 mask. Is that what they're
either
called?
N95. Yeah, they're N95s, but they have the things on the side and the little filter. So it does, to the public, it would look like a gas mask. So they do have those, and they have the filters that's disposable, and they can clean them off. So that's another option. That's good.
So why do we have so many nurses dying if they're getting what they need to protect themselves? Is it possible that they're bringing that to the hospital, or that makes me a little nervous when I see that nurses are dying of this virus, and they're the ones on the front lines helping people. They should be more protected.
You don't hear about it as much now, but when this first came out, I remember the hospitals were not mandating people to wear masks. I remember when I first went on my first day in California back in March, I went in with my own mask, and they were like, "Whoa, what are you doing?"
Mandating you guys to wear masks? Oh no!
Unless you were taking care of the patient.
Oh no!
You could walk around without a mask. Now, soon as you walk, before you get into the hospital, they check your temperature and give you a mask. I took it upon myself to do that. I looked this up. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. So I need to know, what can I do to protect myself? So yeah, I think that's why a lot of it, especially in New York, when you heard nurses were dying by the thousands, they were running out of personal protective equipment, which we call PPE. They were running out of it. So that's why they were dying. But now, they've been able to stabilize and come up with unique ways to conserve. So you don't hear about it as much.
Now I just have another question. How much vitamin C did Sherrie say that we need to consume in a day?
1,000 milligrams.
1,000 milligrams. Good. Well, let's turn the curve here, because we're almost out of time, and I know you wanted you had a plan to talk a little bit more to us. So talk to us. You got the floor.
Okay, great. What I really want to get out to everybody, but definitely my African American community, we got to take care of ourselves. Forget about COVID. Like I said, a lot of these illnesses, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, most of these illnesses are curable, irregardless to what the doctors are saying. The reason why a lot of us are staying on medications is because we're not going to eat right. We don't exercise. And I'm saying the minimum, walk 30 minutes, 5 days a week. That's simple. Just get some sneakers. You don't need a gym membership, and walk your dog. Take a neighbor with you. Put on your mask, stay 6 feet apart, and just go for a nice leisurely walk. Do something. Drink your water, hydrate, change your mindset, meditate. Let's not stress so much, because even stress tears down our body. Let's take care of ourselves and each other.
That's very good advice because I did a report about the suicides that have
Mhm.
come about since COVID. Why is that?
I think we're social creatures by nature, and that's why it's
Mhm.
spreading so quickly. We hug, we kiss. I didn't realize I'm a hugger. I knew that about myself. So it's kind of hard not to see somebody and give them a hug or a kiss, or your loved one or your grandma. I mean, that's grandma. But so I think that's part of it. And, not having that connection, especially those that aren't even able to go to work. At least I have the sanctity to go to work. But you're stuck in your house. Maybe you live alone, you don't have anyone, talking to somebody is great on the phone, but it's not the same as that in-person personal touch. And that's why I think it's high. It's just like newborn babies. We have people that'll go in the hospital if they're abandoned just to rock them, because without that touch, they will physically die.
So what do we do? Give us some advice on that, because I think that sometimes, because I've noticed a lot of mental things going on with people, and I think that sometimes we don't want to hear that that's what it is, because we think, oh no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not
Yeah.
something, and it's like, listen, don't be, embarrassed about that. Don't you want to
Yeah.
live? Let's deal with it. Find out what's wrong. Why is it that you wake up crying every day? Why is it that you go to bed crying?
Mhm.
You're used to being able to provide for your family and you can't now. That it's normal that would make someone a little cranky. So what we have to
Exactly.
do is we got to take it back to the old school. We have to
Mhm.
I think about, and I want to end with this, just to give a visual so that we can kind of pull this thing together. You guys remember back in the days when it would storm. I don't know how it
Mhm.
was growing up in your house, because I know I'm from the South, and whenever there was a storm, for some reason, if we moved, it's like we made the storm worse. It's like,
Yeah.
let's sit down and let God do his work, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we should start applying that to our lives, because
Mhm.
we just have to sit still and just
Yeah.
let God do it, because that storm that's going on is necessary. Because we look at a storm and we're like, oh my God, it just can't get any worse. But look at the results when it storms. The grass grows.
Mhm.
When the grass grows,
Exactly.
the animals are fed. When the animals are fed, you have steak, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's like we have to learn how to navigate through this situation and keep our mind at the same time. And I'm
Correct.
praying that those of you that are watching this broadcast, those of you that will share this broadcast, that you will find that thing and hold on to it to keep your mental state intact. Because
Correct.
all of this stuff matters, Sherrie. I mean, what we eat, what we
Mhm.
read, what we're
Yes.
watching, what we're consuming, both from, because I look at it this way: what comes through our eyes gets in our heart and it eventually comes out
Mhm.
of our mouth. And so if
Correct.
you're not talking right, it's because you ain't watching the right stuff. And if you're not
Mhm.
feeling right, it's because you're not eating the right stuff.
Right stuff.
So
Yes.
we have to change all of that. What
Correct.
would you like to say in part before we get out of here, Sherrie, to everybody?
Like I said, one thing I do want to add real quick: if you are feeling anxious, depressed, suicidal, there's a 1-800 suicide hotline, and then the NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Illness. There's people that can talk to you online for free or talk to you over the telephone about this. So there's help out there for free, because you're right, we're experiencing, a different time that we're accustomed to, and that could be, that could add a lot of stress.
Yeah,
But I just want to say that what I said before, we just got to take care of ourselves,
yeah.
mind, body, and spirit,
That's
and then
right.
take care of each other.
That's right. Take care of each other. That's what we're doing tonight, guys. Because
Yes.
and I want to add this before we get out here. Check on your people. Okay.
Yes.
Check on your people. If you haven't heard from someone and you haven't seen them on Facebook, that's one way to gauge it, because everybody's on Facebook, but you can't always
Yes.
say, well, because they're on Facebook, they're okay. This is a
Exactly.
trying time for everybody. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people that look like they're okay, they're not always okay. People
Okay.
that
Yep.
sound like they're okay, they're not always okay. So
Yep.
really don't just talk to people on Facebook. Really pick up the phone. Hey, sweetheart,
Mm-hmm.
how are you doing today? Just checking on you. Do you need anything? Listen, this is
Yes.
the time to not be stingy, not trying to brag about what you have. No, if you have extra, share it. If you
Yes.
need something, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yes.
This is not the
Correct.
time to be proud, guys. We are
Yes.
in this together, right?
Correct. Yes.
All right, guys. Well, listen, it is time for us to get out of here. I want to thank you all so much. I know this was one of those, this was an informational type, candid conversation about COVID, because we needed to have this conversation, because some of
Correct.
us are just going willy-nilly throughout the day, not having a plan on how to tackle this. And we're just kind of being nonchalant about everything. No, get a plan, listen to the science, trust God also, but do what you need to
First.
do, everything
Yes.
that you need to do to protect yourself and your family. Your life literally depends on it. All right. Well, thank you, Sherrie. As
Thank
always,
you,
it's like
Ella.
you're like my shining star, because I love every time you and I get together. Like the other night, we were on the phone till like 2 o'clock in the morning, just
I
because
know.
I haven't talked to you in a while. But you're
Yes.
just so awesome, and I appreciate you. And being on the front lines, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone that's watching this broadcast. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your sacrifice, because you could just sit at home and say, I'm not going out there. I'm taking care of me.
Yes.
But you've never been sick. You're doing the right things, and you're
Yes.
helping my audience to know what to do. And I appreciate you for that. I'm grateful to you for it. All right.
Oh, thank you, sis.
No. All right, guys. Well, listen, I'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Ella Johnson Show. If you would like to be a guest on my show, you know how to reach me. Just inbox me. I'm always on Facebook. Inbox me or send a text message to 407-334-6997. And just let me know you'd like to be on the show. You want to tell your story. But from time to time, I'll put messages out there to let you know what shows are coming up. And if you want to be a part of it, please hit me up. I'd love to tell your story. But I want you guys to have a wonderful evening. Thank you for those that tuned in from Facebook and YouTube. And I'll see you next time right here on the Ella Johnson Show.